This one will be purely theory, I suppose. So no actual gameplay is going to go on. But for the last one, I'll briefly talk about what you can do post-revoke that are sort of non-obvious in that, okay, literally nobody does it, which I find so weird. So here's the assumption, right? We revoked. So what can we do after this? Well, sort of the obvious next step is to do the last reform, renovatio. Well, that's usually bad. Don't do it. Okay, HRE is so powerful, you should not lose it. Even though the HRE tag gives you a lot of cool stuff. In particular, its missions give lots of permaclaims, but nothing like too fantastic. It does not give like admin efficiency or anything. And its national ideas give both 25% CCR and 5% admin efficiency. So in a sense, it might be tempting to press that last reform, but it's pretty much never worth it. For national ideas, you can always find better ones through other means, unless you're already an endgame tag. But if you're an endgame tag who has no CCR, then I don't know, that's on you. But anyway, let's assume that you're not going to renovatio. There is basically no good argument to press the last reform except for roleplay, of course, or right at the end whenever you want to show off one tag. So no, let's not do that. So what do you do while being revoked? So first of all, I want to introduce the concept of a re-revoke. So what this means is that you revoke again. So step one, you lose a war. Okay, and by offering to revoke the last HRE reform. So that's an option that appears in the peace deal. If you offer, if you go to the offer tab, which is when you offer concessions, and as far as I know, every nation in the world will accept this 100% war score peace deal where you lose a reform. Okay, now this is quite powerful because it means you can kick out any war belligerent whenever you need to by just offering to revoke your last reform. As a fair warning, you do lose all your imperial authority. So basically there's no point in revoking the last reform after banking some imperial authority. However, the important part is that you do not, right? You do not lose your vassals. And you don't lose the unlimited vassal slot. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, you keep your vassals and you keep your revoke basically. And then what you do after that is, well, you revoke again. And of course, this revoke refers to the HRE reform. Okay, and well, you get all HRE vassals again. So of course, there's no point to, lose a war and then revoke your last reform, then revoke again if the HRE hasn't changed. But you see, in between this step, or even here, you can add more nations to the HRE using the Expand Empire CB. And if you add nations to the HRE that way, well, they won't become your vassals. So you do have to revoke again. That's not the only use of this strategy. Okay. You can lose, I'll do a 1B. You can lose a war by offering to release your vassals, your HRE vassals. So what does that do? Well, you globally lose AE. And this roughly corresponds to the vassals dev divided by 4. So you can imagine you expand empire, you get lots of AE, and if you do the 1-2, well, they might not agree to the revoke because they hate you for AE, and they might just leave the HRE. So you can do stuff like losing your vassals intentionally to globally lower your AE. Of course, that creates a -200 opinion from like Reese Overlord abandoned us, but that ticks away very quickly. And you can get around that by, improving relations, influencing nation, and so on. Okay, so re-revoking is kind of powerful. Now you got to make sure that every time you revoke, you don't lose any HRE members. So you got to make sure everyone agrees. But there are more benefits to losing a war and losing a vassal. Okay, you can reset your vassal's LD, right? So for example, suppose nation A is your vassal, and maybe he has like, I don't know, 10% LD, but you're like, I actually need to seize 2 provinces off of him. So you seize 1 province and he's like 100% LD. So you're like, oh crap, I can never seize this. Well, what you do is you lose A and then revoke again, which will get you A as a vassal again, and it will not have the AE malice from seizing land. Okay, so you can seize again, and so on. So that's how you do the re-revoke. You can, in summary, you can use it to lose AE. You can use it to reset Liberty Desire, and you can use it to vassalize new HRE nations that you forced in through Expand Empire. Okay, so that's very useful. Next one is the most broken thing in the game since 1.30. This is the, what should I call it? Join HRE spam, I suppose is what I'll call it. So hopefully you remember from my lambda revoke that you can TC a particular state using the trade node interface, and that allows you to click join HRE again as long as you're not already in the HRE. So the idea here with this join HRE spam trick is that, well, you never join the HRE. Okay, so you're gonna have a bunch of ticking IA malice, but so you might wonder, is this mutually exclusive with the re-revoke strat? And the answer is no, because you can always use the lambda revoke strat to sort of spike up your IA at will. Okay, but so what's the theory behind this? Well, it turns out that every connected province by land joins the HRE when you click join HRE. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, well, okay, how do I draw a map? Say this is like, I don't know, say this is Russia, right? And that's, okay, so Russia's in Europe, and I don't know, maybe you have like a land bridge through the steppes, and so these are like the steppes. Let's say this is Uzbek and Oirat, and this is like, I don't know, like Transoxiana, whatever. Okay, you get the point. You have this land snake, and eventually you get to Beijing, right? And this is your big boy China. Okay, let's draw that a bit more accurately. Okay, whatever. This is China, okay? This is Ming. Okay, so you spend 1 war to conquer a bridge to Beijing. Then you click join HRE. right? And what happens is that all these provinces join the HRE. I should use a different color. So now these provinces are in the HRE. So in particular, Beijing is in HRE. Let's see. Okay. Now what? Well, you return province. So that's step one, right? So step one is like taking a capital of some nation that's huge, and you put it in the HRE by snaking to it. And in step two, you return Beijing to Ming. Okay, and step three, take Ming's new capital. So what happens? Well, if you remember from my last video, I talked about the join HRE, force move capital formula, and you're gonna have to play with it a bit. But basically, what we're doing is we're forcing Ming's new capital back to Beijing. Okay, so Ming cap goes to Beijing, and now Ming is in the HRE. Because to be in the HRE, your capital has to be in the HRE. Okay, so yeah, now you just force the Ming in the HRE. You can do crazy stuff like this using the join HRE spam. Another trick with the join HRE spam is if we go back to this crude map that I have with Russia, suppose, you simultaneously declare war on Uzbek, TRS, Transoxiana, all these nations, you simultaneously declare war on them, right? And, well, you piece them out all at once. So what will happen is, you're going to have a bunch of provinces. Oops. You're going to have a bunch of provinces. I don't know. Okay, and you're going to have like 500 OE or whatever, which you have no hope coring. But that's okay. You just click join HRE. And guess what? All these Asian provinces get added, even though it's not cored. Okay, and what does that mean? Well, you can just release vassals, right? So you just directly release vassals here, and they'll be an HRE prince. Right? You release a bunch of vassals here, and boom, most of your OE is gone. Now, one thing to remember is that it only adds provinces that are connected through land adjacency. So you cannot, for example, give away this if you want to use the join HRE in the future to access some other region. So the idea is you leave a snake, right? This is your snake, and you conquer a bunch of provinces all at once, get like 5,000 OE. Well, 5,000 OE would be very impressive. But, get a lot of OE that you usually have no business handling. And what you do is you core like a snake, because you have to somehow mentally know that, okay, I'm going to need this snake to access this region in the future, or something like that. And then the rest, you just release vassals, and you'll get new HRE princes. Okay, so this is the join HRE broken book. So in summary, you click join HRE, refer to the lambda revoke for how to do that. And every connected province joins. And from there you have two options. One is to force big nations into the HRE. Same way you do it previously, except now you can do it for Asian nations, for example, or African nations. Or you can alternatively take a bunch of provinces, take, let's say, insane OE, add everything, and fix it by releasing vassals. So hopefully that helped. I think that's all I had to say. Let's see. So Yep, I explained the re-revoke, and I explained the joint HRE. Oh, by the way, I'll just mention out there that if you recall my ORET run where I showcased the lambda revoke, I for the most part predict a 1520 world conquest using this strat as a horde. It's very powerful. So if you want to beat my record, you better abuse this. I considered doing it, but it feels a bit too cheap to me, you know, to ignore the coring aspect of world conquest. So I didn't consider doing it, but you know, it'll be a very impressive benchmark to set.